Well, hello there, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. My name is Doug63, and welcome to Hearts of Iron 4, The New Order, Last Days of Europe, as Heydrich's Greater German Reich. Actually, a bit greater now than it was in the last video. We went ahead, built up the coalition as best we can. We got Gelen in Stuttgart. We got a solid position in northeast Germany, not quite the rest of Prussia, but we'll get to that in time. And we got Ferdinand fucking Schona, as our good friend Albert Speer would have said. And so right now we're locking down a solid control over the nukes. Actually, we got 1, 2, 3. This is going to be 4. We'll probably go after Helga Flight next. Outside the Führer's office, Hans Speidel waited. He'd spared any involvement in trying to help Ferdinand Schorner, but now he was expected to introduce him properly to the coalition. A poor joke if that was the intention, not to mention the bastard was always late. Late as always. Speidel had seen his helicopter land outside some 10 minutes prior, but evidently the field marshal was taking the scenic route. Finally, after another 10 minutes wait, the clomping of dirty combat boots on marble tiles began to echo up the hallway, preceding the arrival of the bloodiest tyrant in the here. Grizzled, thin-faced, and unkempt, Schorner clearly hadn't bothered to clean up before coming. Indeed, Speidel could see blood on his right sleeve, which probably wasn't his own. Schorner? Speidel? There was a long moment of tension between the two. The SS guards behind Speidel remained straight-backed and passive, as did the pair of Panzer Grenadiers tailing Schorner. Finally, both spoke simultaneously, understanding each other perfectly. Later. With that, the guards were dismissed, and Speidel turned to throw the doors open. General Fieldmarschall Ferdinand Schorner, my Führer, he announced with no shortage of reluctance. A pleasure, Ferdinand. So how are our relations going right now with the moderates? Still ambivalent. Reintegrated these guys. Wunderbar. Put them on the front line, I guess, here. Why not? Well, all bark and no bite. Barbie is a glorified security guard, not a leader of men. His forces are only ever at home mowing down unarmed civilians. When faced with a real challenge, they were scattered like rats before a flame, no matter how loudly they bark. With the forces we have amassed, Barbie's SS can be crushed at any moment. We'll lose a potential ally, but if the benefit is Barbie's removed from the world, that scarcely seems so terrible. Yeah. All bark and no bite. Next, let's go ahead and do some corporate power. Though true national socialism, as envisaged by Heydrich, will be free from capitalist interference, we must tolerate the industrial cartels for now. We can dismantle them later. Right now, we need their managerial experience to keep the arms factories running. Die Farben, Reichswerke, Daimler-Benz, and Siemens all have presence in Silesia. We should entreat them to support us against Himmler's efforts. We are natural allies, after all. Their money won't be worth anything if it's incinerated by nuclear fire. Oh, overran some guys. Beautiful. And now that's been done. Put some guys around Königsberg. Bypass man in the High Castle. Oh yeah! He's gone. So yeah, that gives Himmler access to one nuke. Let's try to lock down. No, we'll open the keep open for business. By empowering the corporations, bringing them into the fold, we can sideline Karl Hanke. He may be an SS man, but his refusal to immediately swear fealty to Heydrich makes him untrustworthy. Capitals may be driven by greed, but that makes him controllable. We must hope that the cartels do not get wind of our plans for Himmler after Himmler is defeated. They have no place in New Germany, or perhaps they are already aware and they're plotting against us. Whatever case, we must keep an eye on them. We'll hope that works. Decouple Hanke's influence. Pacific Light. We are open for business. Let's do allies abroad. The insane treachery of Himmler runs deep in the SS and is propagated throughout the fatherland. Against all reason, it seems we cannot even trust our own countrymen. Perhaps nation still means nothing in these times. There might be some value in shared Aryan heritage, or however tenuous those ties of blood must be. We shall look to distant shores and the blasted lands of the East. Whatever strength and virtue to be found must and shall be ours. There we go. Alright, we can check how it's going in the east. Vituska is kind of leading towards Heydrich. So is Josias. Poland, Burgundy, Cornwall are neutral. Cornwall doesn't exist anymore, but you get the idea. The dog in the west, the final hurdle. Snake in the East. Mikhail Vituska, a traitor both to his rightful masters and his own pernicious race, followed who collaborated to bring about the demise of Judeo-Bolshevism, was not among the most eager. However, we should not mistake his past groveling for servility. His siege of Ostland has demonstrated that he has no regard for the correct order of things. Though we can never trust him, even the smartest of vipers can bear the deadly venom. Better have our hands on his serpentine neck than Himmler's, or worse, no hands at all. The German Reich has the privilege, rightfully earned in blood, of being one of the truly global superpowers. One benefit of such status is that any power struggle within the Reich has ripple effects across the globe. When Heydrich rose against the usurper Himmler, the whole of humanity stood to watch the clash of the Spartans. Some of those spectators may persuade to support the correct side. Heydrich is desperately in need of any ally he can get, Aryan or not, German or not. Those allies, acquaintances, and even enemies of Germany who hold Himmler in contempt may be our one chance of success. One day long in the future, Heydrich and his successor will travel to truly eternal and global Reich. Now, however, true National Socialists must battle to maintain the world they will rule one day. Vituska was a man more than used to dealing in the dark. Building an empire of alleyways and basements was already his modus operandi. How fitting, then, was it for the king in the dark to gain prominence when all the Reich was under the black sun? Where there was a gap of authority, there was opportunity, and Vituska knew this all too well. It was clear to him that Heydrich did not rule Germany. It was also clear that Himmler did not rule, though this was somewhat more exclusive knowledge. This is good, of course, because come darkness or light, Belarus is the domain of Vituska. He is now eternal as the dirt, the stone, the hills, the trees. How fortunate is it for Vituska that the Reich is divided into squabbling, for he has no such weaknesses. Guns were being smuggled from anyone willing to sell them. Criminal organizations were bribed within and without the borders of Vituska's domain. A few individuals who posed a threat were neutralized in various ways, their bodies sent to send a message. Industrial magnates were educated on Avalon's share of their production belonged to Vituska. Militias were armed, and existing militias were brought over to his side. Every man, woman, child, animal, tree, bush, and blade of grass served him in some way, for Vituska's rule was supreme. A thorned rose grows under the black sun. Fun. Let's get an old friend. Real quick. Joachim Piper, leader of the Blowtorch Battalion. No other man so embodies the ruthless drive of the SS. His bloody, uncompromised command has made him few friends, but plutocrats and Bolsheviks life have learned to fear him. Were he an enemy, would have cause for concern, but Piper and the Fuhrer are old friends. There could still be some hurdles in the way, but bringing the Kampfgruppe to our side will be no trouble at all. So that's with the Idealists, actually. Wow. Okay, we might want to get working on the Idealists, I realize now, and the Pragmatist. Though this will go ahead and increase the factional opinion, it seems. A seat at the table. How could the Fuhrer have anything but respect for Piper? He's a man who's proven his absolute loyalty to the Reich by word and deed, time and again. He is a physical manifestation of the SS's martial ethos. We shall approach him as a benevolent superior officer, not an aloof dictator. Piper deserves fair treatment for his decades of service, no matter what disagreements we might find out. Harsh demands will not lure him down from his Alpine fortress. We'll decouple his influence. Got some more support companies and artillery barrages done. Do tactical support. And then preemptive strikes. Seats at the table. Eagle's Nest. Let it be known that Heydrich is not so aloof that he will refuse to meet his subordinates. He is no Bormann, lording over the Reich from the comfort of his office. He is more than willing to descend from the Reich Chancellery to handle affairs with his own two hands. Let Piper see our intentions for himself. He is a simple soldier, able to appreciate a leader who takes the initiative. And this Heydrich is 10 times the man Himmler could ever hope to be, and Piper will know it. Launay has taken over. Oh, he has connections to Himmler's Burgundy. That's not good. A trip to the Eagle's Nest. Let's do a lighter touch. Maybe we might want to approach Donitz, actually. Grand Admiral Donitz has made his triumphant return from Crimea now that the dust has settled. Not that he's here to fall for loyalty. In fact, we're not certain what he intends to do. Despite being a avowed Bormannite, it seems he's not here to contest Heydrich's rule. Our sources claim that he's conducting some sort of rescue operation near the border with Denmark. Indeed, many refugees have been fleeing north, causing no shortage of trouble for us. Stemming the flow makes things easier on us. On the other hand, they are still citizens of the Reich and deserving protection. Ailing them might be the key to forging an alliance with Donitz. Support industrial loyalty. Excuse me. Heydrich had always been used to the music meeting spot more than the Führer it had been built for. Hitler never liked heights, as he yelled, he thought the thin mountain air would serve to send him to an early grave. The Führer's hang-ons, meanwhile, preferred to stay in Germania, where they could weasel their way into every political dealings or going on that occurred to him. Heydrich, comfortable that the Führer would not replace him because of it, made infrequent visits to the Kelstein house. Piper had already been waiting for him in the foyer. Heydrich wordlessly sat. His old friend poured him a cup of tea. For a moment, Heydrich allowed himself to think that they were back in the olden days, having a leisurely chat about nothing of consequence. That was not the case. I'm afraid there's something I must share with you, Jochen. Great things. Heydrich generally withdrew the folder containing Himmler's grand plan, offering it to Piper. Piper shook his head, pushing the folder back towards Heydrich without so much as a glance. I know. I've known for years now. Since soon after the war. Heydrich's soft gaze hardened to a glare. And as the words cut deep, Himmler, the bastard, had told Piper before him. Who else had known? Josias? Von Ribbentrop? Who else had Himmler trusted more than his prize lieutenant? His voice was a growl. I suppose you've been aiding him then? Working with the madmen and lunatics to doom the world? No. For the first time in years, Heydrich saw fear creep in his old friend's eyes as he pleaded with Führer. I wanted the chance to stop him, Reinhard. But I could not do it on my own. It was impossible. So Heydrich looked upon Piper in the state. Somewhat he had long looked up to. He felt nothing but a rush of disgust. Cowardice was not a good look for a military man, nor a good trait for an ally. Piper behaved like a disgrace to the Aryan race and National Socialism, would have continued to do so had Heydrich not risen up against Himmler. For a moment, the Führer considered putting the warm, once his friend, out of his misery. But times were desperate. Let's share local intelligence. They're more or less leaning towards us now, I think. Yeah, I think we're good in this regard. The industrial guys are turning our direction, which is very nice. Next, let's go ahead and do... Alright, that's the navies. Got 5, 3, 1. Regardless of our political disagreements, Donitz is a hero of the Reich. He may not be the SS, but his leadership and tactical genius that allowed the Kriegsmarine to achieve final victory over the fleets of perfidious Albion. Let us assist the Grand Admiral with his rescue operation. Saving Aryan lands is more important than political games, especially if it earns us the Kriegsmarine means loyalty. Very negative, ambivalent. Decouple his influence. Reclaims the fleet. And then what next? Can approach the pilots. That might be a good idea. I'll do this first. Once Donut swears allegiance to Heydrich, we'll be able to make use of the Kriegsmarine's capabilities to win the war. Notably, they will be able to bring in supplies from anywhere outside the Reich who cares to assist us. More importantly, Burgundy's navy is no match for ours. Keeping their submarines and convoy raiders at bay will be tremendously helpful, as will the ability to bombard coastal positions from afar. There we are. We can facilitate refugee movement. Relocate civilian assets. Let's do that. Rule the waves. Huh. Let's approach the pilot. Actually, let's get working on Vituska now. Vitutska differs from most earnest brutes in that he possesses a vicious cunning, presumably to compensate for his lack of a backbone. He cares nothing for pride, only survival and advancement. Despicable traits, unworthy of Reich's good graces, but they make him malleable. Vitutska knows that ultimately he cannot stave off German control forever. The Führer will extend a hand of grace to his pretended kingdom and offer him promises of loosened reign, perhaps, a favorable balance of power. He knows what's good for him, doesn't he? Negotiate with Piper's forces. That'll give us more influence here. Within the SS, he's known for his freezer short quarters, as well as regular massacres of PWs and civilians. Yeesh. Not a nice guy, but fuck, we need him right now. Our Tin Pot Dictator. Predictably, Vitutska dances around the idea of alliance, turning aside direct overtures with false flattery, while making a mock of our diplomats. Still, he knows what's good for him, and that free people cannot match our strength. Though cooperative is too strong a word to describe his attitude, he does have a vested interest in preventing Himmler's victory. He's unlikely to offer any direct military support, but may offer assistance if it will help to secure his personal rule of Ostland. At the very least, he won't be helping Himmler. There we go. Probably poach maybe the pilots next. Heydrich knew that Vitutska, was not the kind of man to submit to him. Being among that rare breed of men, a trait that Heydrich shared, who would not bend the knee to force. Still, that it remained disappointing when the envoy came back with news of Vitutska's failure to join the coalition. Who is better for Belarus? It is me. The soldier finished reciting the opinions that inspired in Belarus, but Vitutska was not interested in bending the knee. The coalition had a blank spot in the east, and this was a setback that must be worked around. Already working on trying to figure out what the next Dark Coalition would be, Heydrich was interrupted when the soldier spoke up again. Vitutska had another message outside of initial discussion. The soldier's face betrayed no emotion, showed no news of whether this was good or bad news. The way was spotted. Go on, Heydrich shared with interest. Vitutska has absolutely no interest in joining the coalition. However, recognizing a common enemy in Hitler, he's decided to spare some aid for the coalition to help in this struggle. This was good news, and a smile almost appeared on Heydrich's face. A common enemy indeed. Vitutska detested Heydrich, and always will, but even the self-made king in Belarus would know he would have nothing if Himmler had his way. That was all Vitutska would give, and was enough for satisfaction. Vitutska would get his just due at a later time. Aid has arrived in the east. And yeah, our SS allies are not too friendly to us. So what do we want to do? Let's keep our SS strong. Core of Heydrich's support base will always be the SS, not the Burgundians. While the latter must be constantly appeased, the former have always looked up to our new Führer as a paragon of National Socialism. Retaining the faithful sons of Germany in our coalition will not be complicated. They're typically content to have the same rewards they always have, albeit in ever greater quantities. Unfortunately, the Spartanist attitude has not yet been correctly inculcated in the Deutsche SS yet. In time. In time. I'm also going to do my best to not look at that debt number, because holy fuck, that is huge. We'll do I wanted to go down this one. It's a little bit too late. Oh well. Let's hold Himmler's loyalties. Keeping Himmler's favorites on our side will require endless dedication. Their loyalty to Heydrich is addicted on viewing his vision as more valid than that of Reich Führers. If they have reason enough to doubt us, or adequately tempted by Himmler's promise of a place in the bunkers, they will surely abandon us without hesitation. Thankfully, Himmlerites lack the cold reptilian mind of their namesake. They are creatures of emotion, defined by the ebb and flow of racial pride and hatred for the enemy. That makes them pliable, if nothing else. We'll meet with their leaders. Share local intel. We'll relocate civilian assets here. How are we doing influence-wise? 66, 73, 85.1. Okay. Oop, they've joined the Himmler Loyalisten. You might want to go for Luftwaffe. Johannes Steinhoff is no friend of the SS, but he's one of the Reich's greatest flying aces and one of the commander of the Luftwaffe. While most of the surviving Luftwaffe and a sizable here contingent, he's established a base in Regensburg in a desperate attempt to survive. Steinhoff's people are hemmed in by the SS and crying for a savior. That savior could be Heydrich. Would it not be right and just for the fear to protect them from the predators and traitors of madmen alike? Steinhoff would be obligated to display gratitude in such a case. That's what I'm thinking, at least. Doing pretty well so far. Fuck, where wasn't there another one? First the pilots. Meet with SS idealist leaders. Let's do it for the good of a Luftwaffe. For the good of Luftwaffe, the best way to win over Steinhoff is by providing what he needs. He's short on fuel, ammunition, spare parts, and manpower. All things we can give him in exchange for an alliance. As a pragmatic man, he is unlikely to turn us down, especially given his empathy for people under his care. This tactful approach will cost us time and resources, but will pay off in the long run. The more the Führer shows his generous side, the more that likely people are to believe it truly exists. That would be most useful. Sukarno's winning the war. Keep working. $77.5, $57.5, here 66. Okay, for the good of Luftwaffe, refueled and rearmed. With arms and fuel flowing to them, Luftwaffe remnants will become a potent force again. Burgundy lacks a substantial amount of air power, so when combined with armed forces of Luftwaffe will constitute a significant advantage in their favor. The ability to strike the traitor in his home should not be underestimated. There is little glory in bombing fellow Aryans, but it must be done, just as another sacrifice of blood and ash upon the altar of victory. Negotiate with Paifa. Let's provide them some spare parts. Money is fucking useless at this point. I mean... It might be a good idea to go ahead and get a little army on the border. Refueled and rearmed. Morals mean nothing in times of war. The only thing more despicable than a subhuman is a treasonous subhuman. Against all reason, the slaves of East Prussia have risen up and seized a portion of Germany's sacred land. Jews, Poles, Russians, and a dozen other varieties of subhumans now control a key agricultural area along with the proud Aryan city of Königsberg. And yet, we hesitate. Those barbarians are the most vicious enemies of the Germanic race imaginable, brutalized by years of enslavement and extermination. Spidel, that deluded fool, thinks we might contemplate entering into an arrangement with us. Damn you, Himmler, for that we must do. Suharto coups the government. Relocate civilian assets. Is that going down? Fast tracks fuel shipments. 2, 3. Okay, if we end up losing Village, we'll still be okay if we can get Königsberg. Enemies side by side. National focus complete. Okay. The rest of you guys get on that front line. Spidel was losing his grasp on reality, Heydrich thought. To find common cause with slaves, rebelling slaves at that, was he completely mad? The Führer had asked directly, and been met with only a somewhat pitiful stare, followed by the assurance that it made sense from a pragmatic standpoint. As Heydrich stood by the window, staring out upon the ruined government offices across the way, he felt his teeth begin to grind at the thought of the train of thought being provoked when by Spidel refused to abate. Yes, he could see the logic, regardless of whether they were slaves or not. Anyone who wasn't a cripple could hold a gun, and soldiers were what he needed, but still. Slaves? How many could even be considered worthy of standing in his presence? Could a single drop of Aryan blood be found in their veins, even if each and every one of them was squeezed dry like an orange? They're almost all Slavs or Jews, so they're thought of. But the HoI action had been authorized, hadn't it? There were Aryans in the East living among the subunits. That was unusual. How could that have been the case? Their value had been proven. Even that buffoon Rosenberg hadn't given definite evidence of... Heydrich shivered and moved to stand near the heater. The lines dividing the hierarchy of races were clear-cut and insurmountable. It had to be. The theory of National Social Science proved the fact, but empirically... Clenching his fist, the Führer returned to his desk and looked for something else to occupy his mind. Blessed of mind, too small for doubt. Let's do... Let's send in the middleman. Allying with the slaves was Spidel's idea, therefore negotiations will fall to him. The Führer will have no truck with subhumans, no matter their use. Failing that, we will send someone else, anyone who is in Heydrich. The Führer must remain some dignity, after all. Let's see if they can't figure it out. Old Casimir's the liberal Democrat in fucking Germany. Nazi Germany, and that's not a good thing to be. For the greater good, for the greater good, for the greater good. Heydrich had been muttering the same 4 words for half an hour as he worked. Reputation worked well for forcing change on one's mental processes. His so-called betrayal of his ideas were not incongruent with the necessities that would make the survival of the Reich possible. He'd set aside morality before. Nobody would have been there at Wannsee to help with the final solution. In motion, would argue that was acceptable by the standards of the population. It had always been about pure necessity, about freeing the Reich citizens from the burdens of doing it themselves in the future when the full evil of international Jewry became too obvious to ignore any longer. This was no different. It was merely a sacrifice of conventional morality to ensure the continued well-being of a Germanic race. If you could extract a certain term from slaves, they could still be of use when removed from the equation, just like the Madagascar plan. They didn't have to die, just ceased to be a problem for Germany. There's no contradiction therein. So Heydrich told himself, over and over again. He repeated it from dawn till dusk, till his well-trained conscience finally felt silent. The next day, he started all over again. The greater good, the greater good, the greater good. Some of pragmatist leaders. Our loyalty is falling there. Decouple his loyalty. $80.8, 69.3. Nice. The middleman. We can talk. What are the Sons of Sudeten? Who are they lining up with so far? They're Himmler leaning. Heydrich leaning. They're just anti-German. Can't say I blame them. Do we want to go with Adam Dressler? Go with the talk to the ancient mensch, perhaps. Could bring the garrison home, maybe. You know what? Money talks. The Bretons and their bastardy and greed remain as useful as ever in times of treachery such as these. Perhaps unscrupulous men are just what we need, especially if they become bearing arms of plenty. Knowing Brittany, they will also be what he's selling to Himmler and anyone else in the Reich willing to pay. They will pay for their double dealing later, but for now we must play the game and indulge our avarice. Of course you want to send me. Spiedel's voice was not resigned, but rather matter-of-fact. I suppose you could give me a dozen different excuses for it. Heydrich didn't bother looking up to the general's withering gaze. Of the native truck, with subhuman Spiedel. You will be the Reich's liaison to those vermin, since you seem so eager to pardon their existence. Spiedel remained stone-faced, not permitting his distaste for fear to show. Those vermin were better than your SS holding Prussia. If you don't see the basic decency in this, at least try to see the practical benefit. The figure's pen froze on the paper before him, leaving a steadily spreading ink blot. Still, Heydrich did not raise his eyes. For a long, intense moment, there was silence in the office, save for the ticking clock, against which Spidell kept his heartbeat measured. His eyes were drawing back to the black Luger, polished and properly loaded, on Heydrich's desk. Finally, Heydrich resumed writing without a word. There was only a hateful silence, but within it was understanding. Spidell turned on his heel and strode from the office, a single bead of sweat trickling down his forehead, resolved to keep a tighter leash on his conscience. As much as an upstart as most slaves. The militarists have a positive attitude, at least. Once again, Spidell stood before the Führer's desk, wearing a fresh uniform, but obviously sleep-deprived. That was one thing they had in common. Right then, their attitudes couldn't have been further apart. "Do you want to talk to me?" Heydrich almost growled at the question. "That you even permit them to make such a request. What about your bodyguards? Did you think to just end it right there? Shoot the stubborn Pole and liberate us from this sorry affair?" "I deemed our objective to be more important," lied Spidell smoothly. In truth, he'd been quite happily sent his guards away and disarmed himself before meeting Piechowski. However, he decided that informing Heydrich that would not have been conducive to the alliance. "Your objectives, not ours," snapped Heydrich, showing no more intemperance than Spidell had ever known to possess. "Yours. I want no part of this disgrace. Furthermore, you've yet to convince me that this is better use of our time than just setting the SS to wipe those savages out." Spidell leaned on his desk, ignoring Heydrich's slight jump at someone so hostile coming too close for comfort. "Because they're willing to talk at all, Heydrich. That's more than you can say for most of the SS. They know you're the reason many of them were made slaves in the first place. But they're still open to talk. They don't have any interest beyond survival, which you can offer them. For that, they're willing to walk away from justice." "Justice?" Herr Spidell. "Revenge. Whatever you want to call it. Now it's your choice whether to proceed, but you know where you should stand on this. Swallow your pride and go through with it if you've any decency." "Fine. Prepare an escort." Man. $63, $69. $81. We're getting closer to integrate these guys, so I'll work on that for now. These guys are the moderates, so I'll go ahead and do that. Money talks. We'll see what ends up happening there, I suppose. Let's keep the military stated. The Wehrmacht's short-term demands generally trend towards the practical. Their distress can always be alleviated by a considerable degree by showing that we will not empower the SS at their expense. To this end, we should make sure that their material needs are met and avoid the appearance of SS favoritism, maintaining the militarist loyalty. In this way, we'll meet a substantial industrial investment to meet their demands. However, it will be more than paid off if they are able to bring those guns to bear on Burgundy. Send some fuel shipments. Relocate civilian assets. Yeah, that is going down. Okay. How's our native relations? Positive. I think we talk. So, it's come to this. The leader of the children of Spartacus, as they arrogantly call themselves, this Pietrovsky, wishes to meet Heydrich himself. Insolent Polish rat. To degrade the honor of the Aryan race like this, we should be meeting as master and slave. If it must be done, then we have no choice. Talk. I was thinking of militarist leaders. I think that might be the better bet at this point. The SS idealists at this point, I don't think they're siding with us. Sufficiently loyal. Sufficiently loyal. Sufficiently loyal. I think we are sufficiently done with this episode, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you as always for watching. If you like this video, go ahead and leave a like. If not, feel free to dislike. If you want to see more of this content in the future, go ahead and hit the subscribe button for more uploads every weekday, as well as every Saturday. If you have any comments, feedback, concerns, anything of the sort, go ahead and leave in the comment section below. I read all the comments I get and appreciate any all feedback you might have for me. If you want to chat, play games, do anything of the sort, check out my Discord. If you want to have fun, see me do this live at Twitch. If you want to see me, if you want to send me bucks my way, I have a Patreon, all of which are down linked below. Thank you as always for watching, ladies and gentlemen. My name has been DB333, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.